I'm delighted to have with me this morning, obviously someone who I'm really close to in terms of, the person who really, when everybody was doubting me whether I could make it, somebody who's seen a look in my eye and managed to get me a stay of execution, which I ended up turning into a football career. I'm, as I say, I'm delighted to have you here today. Joining us on Common Sense, Jim Cassell, Manchester City Academy Director, through the halcyon days of international after international after international, being produced on the production line in the academy. Firstly, obviously Platt Lane, and then a little bit later on when the first team moved to Carrington. So Jim Cassell, delighted to have you with you, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah, cheers, Joe. Lovely to be here, and obviously great to see you. You always make me smile when I see you, which will surprise a lot of people because you're a football man, and that's what, when you say you look for something in people. I know that if you wouldn't have made it in the Premiership, you'd have still been playing football until your days, till you couldn't play anymore, because you just loved the game. And that's what one of the qualities that I suppose people in my job at the time would always look for. So, yeah, it was great. I loved every minute of that job because we never, ever had a bad player, in my opinion. Obviously, some would go further than the others, but no player, in my opinion, was ever a bad player, and they all deserved equal amount of my attention, if you like, and the staff's attention to try and get them to the very highest level we could.
So we'll touch on Man City's obviously academy and the great success that was had there, and that I would imagine we'll go through the whole plethora of players and the different types and what you've seen, and obviously that special gift you have for recognising talent, especially at a young age. It's a very, very difficult skill to be able to look at a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old and predict what he's going to be like at 21, 22. But I want to take you back to where it all started, Jim. Where did it begin for you?
In terms of playing football?
You?
Yeah,
right,
okay.
Yeah, where did you fall in love with the game?
When I was born, probably. Always wanted to be a footballer. Probably at the time neglected education and all that. Never ever veered from that line. I wanted to be a player. And obviously, if you're a Manchester lad and you played for Manchester Boys, which I did, you just went either the blue or the red side of the city. And at that time, I was a real red, if you like, and with the great players that were around in that era. So I played, I was lucky enough to train and play with the greatest, probably George Best, who was not only a brilliant player, he was a top lad as well. And, Brian Kidd, all those people were there. And so, yeah, we that was the start of me. I played for United. I was a winger, 10 goals in 20 games, which isn't bad for a winger. And then always had a dodgy knee, which was my excuse for not making it further than...
Left or right?
Right winger, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you were the old-fashioned getting on the outside, or the
old-fashioned
right
winger,
which is a left-footer cutting in?
No, definitely not left-footer cutting in, no. I like you say, we played with good players, and it was a privilege to sort of name people now that you've come across on your little journey, if you like. So obviously I had a cartilage out at 17. In those days that was major surgery. I had a couple of games in City's A team, which I enjoyed, and again the knee let me down, so I had a pretty big op, as it would be in this at that time in 65.
In around the 1900s, knee injury was injury was a problem.
It was, because it actually scarred you mentally a little bit, because it used to have huge cuts and all that type of thing.
Up until the turn of this century, actually, I'm not actually joking. Up until about 2000, an ACL. Roy Keane, Shearer.
Yeah.
Were never the same after. They were never the same. It was a career-ending injury.
Yes, yeah. So as one last, I got a job in Holt's Brewery as a bookkeeper. Worked through, went up to Bury. I just knocked on the door and I said, "Look, I've had these knee injuries. I want to give it one more go." And the manager at the time was a guy called Bert Head, and he said, "Bring your boots tonight." And that was how I used to do it in those days. I turned up, I trained, and I managed to get a couple of games in the first team before the knee let me down again. Bury were good enough to give me a pro contract, so that's a great boast that I have, that I was a pro player. albeit for a small number of games. But it was great because that gave me the platform to get away from what I call a normal job, which was a bookkeeper at Holt's Brewery. I used to work 44 hours a week. In those days, the reserve team football played 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, it was great for me because from working 44 hours a week, I then became a pro. I knew the knee was dodgy. I always loved coaching. I got me full badge when I was 24. So it gave me the breathing space to change careers totally. And I always remember, I tell this story, that £16 changed my life because the manager of the day was Jack Marshall at Bury. I played against Forest reserves in the afternoon, and he came into the dressing room afterwards. I'd taken an afternoon off work to do this. He said, "Why don't you give it a go full time?" I said, "I've been desperate to do that." He said, "I'll sort it out with the board." Sadly, Bury lost at the weekend. Jack got the sack. And so I plucked up courage and I went to the board and I said, "Look, the manager was going to sign me or offer me a contract. Money's tight, etc. What do you earn?" I said, £16. They said, "Okay, we'll match it." So I've signed pro for £16 plus £2 travelling. and it's the best £16 I've ever spent or invested because it enabled me to change my life. I'd already got my prelim badge. I went on in those days, your intermediate coaching badges. Went to Lilleshall and got my badge first time, 24, which I think was one of the youngest at the time. But of course, in the early 70s, there was no academies or anything like that. So I went into local government, and horticulture became my other great tool. I had no knowledge of it. I just taught myself all the Latin names of plants and so on. I've cremated people as part of that job, or I've been in charge of the crematorium.
Done that with a few careers as well.
Yeah, I've probably ruined a few. So it was great. I mean, to be honest, I had no qualifications other than my coaching badge, but I don't think you should ever let anything stop you doing what you want to do. And you create, it's a corny saying, but you create your own university. You learn off people you watch. You volunteer for everything. And it's an old adage, isn't it? The hardest workers are the best players, and it's the same in life. The more if you make an excuse culture, you're never going to do anything. So,
we're surrounded by it at the minute.
Absolutely. I just think, I've been so fortunate. People have invested in me, so they must have seen something, which I think gave me the great intro into the type of. I mean, that job, the academy manager, was handwritten for me. It could not have been better. I'd had 19 years experience working in local government, dealing with reports and formalities, if you like. And then when you're an academy manager, you have to, first of all, know how to coach. You have to be able to recruit. Obviously, you have to manage staff. You have to handle a 9-year-old and his parents, and you have to handle the chairman and the board. So it gave me a great insight into the management structure that you would need to, or the management abilities you'd need to have to manage an academy.
That's really interesting. So you're saying as a young aspiring footballer, you then go to work as an accountant for the brewery, which gives you the control of figures and numbers, which is important if you're an academy director. And then when you think about it, if you go into the kind of, the council and the horticultural side, gardening, nurturing, growing plants is the same as growing young professional footballers, really.
Well, it is. I mean, and always.
Need watering, and they need...
Whatever I did, I wanted to be the best, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you've met Moira, she's a great football person, so we never have any arguments
about...
That's
Jim's better half.
Yeah, she's terrific. And we never have any arguments about watching any sport in our house. She loves golf, she loves... there's only cricket she's not really into. But football, I mean, she loves. And, of course...
What about the women's football?
Well, I tell you what, I'm a great advocate of sport for everybody, right? I think that is great. I love the men's football because I was in it. Yeah. And Gareth Taylor at City, I know he's a good pal, and we text each other occasionally, and I think he's done a fantastic job. I love the fact that the sport is open now to more and more people. I think if you're going to ask me about do I enjoy the football coverage on TV, I think that they've been so good, it's almost becoming to the point now where we need to reinvent it again. I think it's, it's a little bit... I don't put the TV on now until the game starts because although the pundits are very good, I think the format is maybe a little bit stale now, and it needs re-looking at. So that's all I would say with that. I think, I still work doing some voluntary work for a foundation in Switzerland, and obviously we've taken it from an able-bodied tournament where City won the very first one in 2001 with our under-15s, and now we include everything. We have disability, we have girls' football. It's fantastic because people are people, and our life is about people. That's it. So the more you can do to improve the quality of the people you mix with, the better. So I think it's great for me. It keeps me involved. It's all voluntary, and it gives me a greater appreciation of the very sport that we both love, which is the top end of it. Because, there's two things that's great. There's the person that is absolutely top-notch, world-class, and the person that is perhaps not as good but just loves football, and it means as much to them as it does to the person preparing for a Premiership game. So that's always been my involvement. I love going watching, amateur football. I watch anything that I think is good for bringing people together, because that's what sports does. And if I was really, I'd love to see more investment in grassroots football, because just because you're not a Premiership player, why doesn't it mean you shouldn't enjoy it? I'm not a good golfer, but I do enjoy playing golf because of all the niceties that go with it. So
I agree with it. It should be a bottom-up system. We should really, really look after the bottom. Yeah. The young and the bottom, and that will filter and feed people to the top.
The top end of the game is fine, right?
Well, it's gone the other way, hasn't it now?
But I go on. I've got Matthew. We've got Matthew and James, our two lads. Terrific, right? James is a good golfer, as you know, +2 or whatever it is, +3. Matthew still loves football, and he plays amateur football on a Saturday. And I'm telling you, he prepares as if he was playing at the Etihad. And I think that is fantastic. That's what I love about amateur football. And I saw a lot of that in you, because you would have done exactly the same had you not progressed as you did. Because the difficulty we had with you was letting your ability catch up your, your desire to really be the best, wasn't it? Your perception of where you should be was perhaps ahead of your ability at that time. So and I know you always worried about being retained. That was never, ever a question. You were always going to be a player. So that's what I love about sport. It brings us all together. And even now, I still consider myself in sport, even though I've retired and I'm not working. I still, I get phone calls. I help whoever I can. If they want some information, it's there. No problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So when we meet, so you've obviously gone on that journey as trying to be a player yourself, brewery, then into the
local
authorities, and then. When I meet you, Jim, you're the academy that I've just been released. I get released by Everton on a Tuesday night, and I turn up at Man City, who were in the Championship at the time, because Barry Poyton, who was a scout at Everton, had gone about 6 months before to City to work, I think, for you. So how did you go from working, obviously, in the civic space to become an academy director at Man City? What happened in that interim?
Well, I worked at Oldham, as you know.
So that was your first start in football?
I was chief scout at Oldham when we got into the Premiership. So, some of the players we got, the team that we put together at Oldham, Joe Royle and myself, and that was the only two of us who did it.
So how did you get that job, though? How have you ended up going from there to Joe Royle and Oldham?
I'll tell you what, I used to take the B and A teams on a Saturday at Oldham as a coach.
Oldham Athletic?
Yeah, Oldham Athletic. Joe came in 82, and... obviously, Oldham was in a pretty low...
I was only born then, yeah.
A pretty low spot. And there was only 6 of us ever run Oldham when they were in the Premiership. There was Joe Royle, Willie Donachie, who did the first team. There was Ronnie Evans and Ian Liversidge, who were the 2 physios.
Remember Ronnie from City?
Yeah, and myself and Bill Ermson, who did all the youth setup. Bill was the coach. My job was so I did all the senior scouting as well as the academy. And 6 of us ran a Premiership club.
Founder members, yeah?
Absolutely,
members, the Premier League.
Yeah, so I was just there part-time because of the love of football, and obviously the knee had gone, so I wanted to stay in it. Joe must have recognised something in me as a spotting players. So he said to me, look, we're going to restructure the club. I want you to take on the scouting role. So I said, okay, I'll do that, no problem. I said, but if I didn't know that was going to be any good or not at it, I said, I could get you the sack. And anyhow, luckily we put a team together that played in the League Cup final and got promotion that cost us 400 grand.
There's Gunnar Haller there. Didn't find
Gunnar Haller?
Haller?
No, he came across obviously from Norway, and
Andy Ritchie. I remember all of that.
I can tell you the story. I mean, the team. Dennis Irwin, we got on a free transfer. I mean, how do you get Dennis Irwin on a free transfer? I saw him play at Sheffield United on a Saturday afternoon. He got injured, or he was brought off at half time. And of course, I was working at the council and just doing part-time chief scouts job at Oldham. I used to always speak to Joe virtually every day, but particularly on a Monday. And I said, Joe, I've just seen a kid play at. They brought him off. I don't know if he's injured or not. But I said, just keep an eye on him, Dennis Irwin. If ever
who's he playing for at this time?
He was playing for Leeds.
Against Sheffield United?
And Billy Bremner was manager, yeah. So, anyhow, at the end of the season, Joe rang me at work and he said, I've just heard that Dennis Irwin has been given a free. I said, Joe, just sign him. Don't even say you'll trial him. Just sign him. Because if you say you'll trial him, somebody will come in and will know about him as well. And I think he was heading to Chesterfield. And Joe rang him up and... the story's there, isn't it? He was.
So did you see him as a right back or a left back?
Right back.
Because he could play either, really, couldn't he, Dennis?
Great feet.
Yeah.
Never in trouble. Never the best interceptor, reader of a game. Never saw him injured. Terrific feet, and he could play in any era, in any team, and he was
7
fantastic.
out of 10 every week.
Absolutely, and great around the place, And the amazing thing was, I never met him. Because I never used to go in the club. I worked for Trafford Council, which was fantastic, and then at night I'd go out and scout the players. So we got a couple of players from Leeds, Andy Linnigan, and I remember.
Arsenal, Andy,
he
scored for Arsenal, didn't he, in the cup final?
He did. Well, that particular week I'd gone to watch 3 centre halves: him, his brother at Hartlepool, and Terry Boyle at Newport. So I went to Hartlepool on New Year's Day. I went down the following Saturday to Newport.
South Wales,
yeah. And we just had a terrifically bad run at Oldham, where Joe would beat Wimbledon 2-1 that night, and that day. And Joe rang me up and he said, how did Terry Boyle do? I said, Joe, he'll do the job for us. However, the best is Andy Linnigan. I said, give him one more call. Because in those days, the manager would ring... The manager's manager, wouldn't they? And
no agents,
absolutely,
or anything like that.
So he did do, and apparently the story goes that Andy had a bit of a fallout with Billy Bremner, and the rest is history. He was the turning point for Oldham because he was big, he was quick, and he played alongside Paul Jones, who was really got a magnificent football head on him. And we got Paul Jones for £5,000 from Huddersfield, and Andy Linnigan for 45 from Leeds. Dennis Irwin on a free. Tommy Wright we got from Leeds for 90,000.
The goalkeeper?
No, the
Tommy
winger.
Wright.
Tommy Wright, the winger.
Oh, right,
you remember, really good player. Yeah, sold him to Leicester for 300, I think, after that. So, and then Andy Ritchie came across because I think his contract or whatever. But Andy came for a nominal fee. I remember that, and he. Of course, you remember we played on artificial surface.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember going watching it in about '93. Everton playing there, and standing on the terrace at Boundary Park.
Yeah, well, they could beat anybody on that green concrete. That was fantastic, and there were good players as well. That team now, often Joe and I chat about it. We still have a few days away together at the end of the year, the remnants of that team. Frankie Bunny,
Bunny, my coach at
Bunny's
17.
terrific. He's still having counselling, having coached you, I think. But
Coach me, Wheelo, Paddy McCarthy.
Oh, terrific bunch, yeah. And like we say, we're digressing a bit, but it was never a chore working with those lads. We loved every minute of being in there.
Ian Marshall, we were talking about getting Ian Marshall on the podcast. Someone put him into us. He was in that group as well, wasn't he?
Ian Marshall, we got from Colin Harvey was manager at the time of Everton. Terrific bloke. I love Colin because he's like you and me. Yeah. He just talks football and used to have some fantastic quizzes about players. Bill Urmson had joined in, who was the coach, but he never got one right. Colin and I used to answer them all. But fantastic. And I remember I took Joe to see Ian at Blackpool on a Tuesday night. Colin was there, and he played up front. So I said, Joe, he can play up front, he can play at the back. And, if he had a slight weakness, Ian, he would probably get a little bit bored because he could find, he was terrific. He was quick, he had great feet. He could play centre half or centre forward, and I think we paid 90 grand for him. So, I mean, what a player.
Remember him with the old feather
with the long hair.
Yeah.
He was brilliant, I'll tell you. And obviously Joe and Colin had played together, so that influenced probably the provided we could stump
Who else was in that midfield? Was Milligan there? Mike Milligan,
Nick Henry,
Nick Henry,
yeah, and Andy Barlow. So they were the three that came through the youth setup. And then there was Andy Rhodes in goal and John Hallsworth. They were the two keepers. Andy Rhodes I still keep in touch with, still okay. Dennis was right back, Andy Barlow left back. Richard Jobson came from Hull.
Jobbo, he was a good pro at City when I was a young'un.
And then that was after Linnigan had moved on, because obviously Oldham, you constantly had to sell players. Yeah, the midfield was Neil Adams.
Earl Barrett, as Earl turned
Earl
up
Barrett,
at that point?
Earl Barrett was the other one, yeah. So Earl Barrett we got from Man City for 35 grand. And then we got Warhurst for 10 grand from City, who all went on to
play. Another striker defender, he done unbelievable.
He could do. He was. What should I say? He was probably the smoothest player, the quickest player as well. Terrific technique, and the great thing was, we could push up. You talk about teams playing high, as the modern term is now. We could defend on the halfway line because we had so much pace in the team, and on the artificial. And the wind that used to come down the hill at Oldham, we could defend for fun there. Nobody would beat Oldham at the pump in there, yeah. So you had the perfect blend. That was your midfield. Henry and Milligan, who were termed the yard dogs by some people.
Dogs of War, Joe.
Dogs of War, that's
there,
right.
didn't he?
Neil Adams on the other side, who we got from Everton. Rick Holden, who we got from Watford. But I used to watch.
He ended up at City, though, didn't he?
He did, yeah. But I used to watch Rick on a Friday night at Halifax. And in those days, it was great because you could go. Then I went to see him play away from home at Scarborough, again on a Friday night. And you could walk around the ground and just... The fans are the great judges, tell you everything about the players, because fans know that they really, are the unsung heroes. The fans are, after players, the fans are the most important thing, aren't they? So
they watch them all the time, don't they?
And they know a player.
Yeah.
They know a player and they know a fake. So you learn a lot off the fans. Yeah, so that was our... And then we had Bun and Richie up front. Frank was great at getting his body in hold. Richie was silk. And that... Joe used to have a saying that sometimes he could be like world-class with the ball at his feet, and then maybe when the ball isn't at his feet, non-league, you know what I mean? Because that was Andy. But terrific on that artificial pitch, and him and Frankie Bunn were a brilliant combination.
Well, it's interesting there, you talked about Linnigan and the lad who was the centre-half with him, who was Paul the bit Jones. Of a ball player.
Yeah.
And whenever you hear, people talk, it's the yin and the yang, Vidic, Ferdinand, whatever it is, Carvalho, John Terry, that it's better not having two aggressive ones. You kind of want one aggressive one and dominant ball winner, which it sounds like Linnigan was, and obviously Jones on the other side, who's a bit more composed and maybe can start to build from. That must have been interesting, Jim, because I always remember Sheffield Wednesday getting to a couple of cup finals, Warhurst becoming a striker and catching fire to take them. But I always remember, I think John Ark scored the opening goal, the American centre midfielder. But it ended up going to a couple of replays. These was the days when the FA Cup final wasn't settled on penalties.
Yes.
And I think Andy Linnigan scored in either the third replay or something. He ended up getting the winner against...
He did, a header from a corner.
Yeah, he ended up getting the winner against... I want to say it was Chef Wed. I want to say it was Warhurst, Chef Wed, Des Walker and all that, So that must have been a strange one for you. So Oldham founder members of the Premier League 1992. So when you started Oldham, what year is that and what division are they in?
Right, well, I started part-time in 82.
82.
Right, or just before. I'd just finished. Colin MacDonald, who took me to Oldham, and Colin MacDonald was fantastic. You may or may not remember him. He played for England in the 58 World Cup, famous for a sort of twisted save, almost like you refer to Colin for the save against Brazil in that game, as you would Gordon Banks, yeah. And again, Colin must have been one of these guys that saw something in me, because he took me into coaching. And
I don't want to stop you there, but you know that World Cup, that '58 World Cup's one of the is I think the biggest turning point, because I think Germany beat Hungary. Is Germany beat
54
Hungary?
That was.
That 54.
Yeah.
That World Cup there was the Germans coming out of 2 world wars and then winning that World Cup against Frank Puskás and the Mighty Mayas or something like that they were called,
it was.
weren't they?
It come back from 2-0
and then
down
58,
as well.
is that Pele's first one?
That was Pele's 17-year-old, when they beat Sweden in the final,
That was the emergence
so
of Pele,
that was, you used to watch it in black and white and even go next door to somebody that's got a TV, didn't you, in those days? But it was great. It always had an influence on you. And the 66 World Cup, when of course it was in England, was brilliant. Because obviously a lot of the games, Old Trafford and Goodison, I mean, we all remember the famous Hungary-Brazil game where the classic goal on it, Florian Albert picks up in midfield, out to Beattie on the right, he goes down the line, crosses it, and Vargas comes and hits it on the volley, I mean, a classic goal, you never forget a player or a goal, do you?
Well, I always remember my granddad would go to the game then, Jim, and he obviously went to the World Cup, and he was speaking about Eusebio. I think Portugal played at Goodison, maybe played North Korea. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Portugal either drew with North Korea at Goodison.
No, they were 3-0 down and they won 5-3.
Who won
Portugal, and Eusebio.
And he just kicked 10 lumps of shite out of Eusebio, didn't he?
They did,
North Koreans.
Do you know something? He was the rubber. I had the pleasure of meeting him, by the way. We used to do the lunches at City.
Yeah.
Eusebio was a guest, and
I was there. I was there.
Were you there?
Yeah, I remember him coming there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, Kevin would have been there as manager, Kevin Keegan. So, I mean, but that's what, when you think to meet somebody that you've seen and idolised, I'd have loved to have met Pele, but I never did. Obviously, the other pal of mine, Dennis Stewart, who was on the board in the early days, and he played with Pele at Cosmos, so we talk a lot about that, you know what I mean? It's great.
But Pele was the South American Messi, the superstar, and you obviously had Eusebio, who was the European superstar.
Yeah.
Because people forget, 66, obviously England win it, beating West Germany in the final, albeit VAR might have changed the game now. But then 68 is Man United, isn't it, winning the European Cup at Wembley, and obviously they beat Benfica and Eusebio's on the other side of Best-Law Charlton.
Yeah.
So, 82, you end up getting your gig at Oldham part-time.
Yeah, part-time.
And what division are Oldham in there, Jim?
They're in what is the Championship now, so second division.
All right.
Yeah, and we used to fight to stay in the second division. Yeah, and Jimmy Frizzle had been manager before Joe for a long period. Did a great job because he brought them up from the fourth to the Championship. And then obviously Joe took over. He was a rookie manager at the time. The chairman was Ian Stott, a great bunch of board members who never put any pressure on the manager. They were like custodians of the club, but fans as well. They were brilliant. And Ian Stott was the chairman, who sadly is not with us now, but he was terrific. And I learnt a lot about him. He used to say to me, Jim, never make a decision on a Saturday night. And I thought, how true is that? Because the fans go all mad if we lose, and certainly people that like to pull the knife out and never kicked a ball but think they can do the manager in or whatever. So I learnt a lot about patience and good manners off him, and I think that's what Oldham was as a club. It was a fantastic club full of nice people who eventually worked their way through. Joe was terrific. He was in his pomp. He actually not only run the club, a bit like Shankly and Klopp have done, he run the town as well. And, the people of Oldham they've named a stand after him, which is a nice tribute because, Joe has been not only a massive influence to me, I think he's one of life's great human beings. And, again, we'll have a few beers when we go on holiday at the end of the season.
Well, he's remembered favourably here on Merseyside, certainly by the Blue Persuasion for the job he done, not only as a player, where he was fantastic and scored a load of goals and led the line for us, but obviously when he came back as a manager and saved Everton from what looked like a certain relegation, albeit we had to maybe rely on a bit of dodgy Hans Sager's fucking goalkeeping. But obviously then went on to win the FA Cup in '95, the Dogs of War, and he gave Everton fans, certainly of my era, the only cup I've seen Everton win since. They've obviously won trophies since '82, but I can't remember them, and '95 was the first bit of silverware and last bit of silverware I seen as an Everton. But So Joe comes as Joe stopped playing and gone right into kind of player management there.
Yeah,
then when he took the Oldham gig.
he came from Norwich. He'd gone from Everton, I think, to City, then City to Bristol City, and then to Norwich. And I'm pretty sure it was a knee or a back injury that caught up with him. And that was his first job at Oldham. And Ian Stott was brilliant with him. You know, rather than put the manager under pressure, he would say to him, look, Joe, you know, because I remember, you know, you have discussions afterwards and Joe was sort of thinking, is this for me? And Ian Stott used to talk him out of, don't worry about the results, Joe. We know where we're at. We know what our budgets are. We know we're punching above our weight. And, you know, that was when we started to get things together, because virtually there was a lot of good players playing in reserve team football at the time. We've mentioned most of them, Earl Barrett, Warhurst, etc. And sometimes if you don't know what you've got, you lose it. And a lot of clubs, in my opinion, didn't know what they had, or maybe their management changes. You know, a manager changes and wants to bring some of his own men in straight away. And of course, there's assets there that you can take. So that's why we're able to build a team for 400 grand, which went on to the Premiership.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like that model that you use when you're talking about that model now. I'm thinking about City's academy, and you kind of implemented the similar thing. You were going to catch everything that fell through the net from all the other big clubs around you, and you knew talent and knew how to nurture talent, and you were quite happy with your judgment. And you know, lots of people won't take other people's discarded players because they're like, well, if Man United or Liverpool have got rid of them, then how are they going to be good enough for us? Don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but you had no ego about looking in other people's trash cans and unearthing talent and then polishing it up and developing it.
It was just as it was at the day. We had nothing. I mean, you mentioned Barry Poynton, right? And Barry had left his post at Everton. I arrived at City and I was the only man there. I couldn't believe it. I thought I'd been headhunted for once to take on a job at a big club. And I turned up, I had a porter cabin.
I remember them porter cabins,
desk,
on top of each other.
And the lights went out in the porter cabin at 4 o'clock when they put the lights on for the artificial pitch next door, because the power wasn't strong enough. And I had no records. There was nothing. There was no provision to even wash the kit. And this I was sort of said to Rod Owen, who was our kit man and a terrific lad. I said, look, how on earth have you worked here for so long? It's terrible. He was a manager and he was taking the kit home to get it washed so that he could take the team on the Sunday again. So I said, look, we need to get this sorted out. We're going to have a real go at this. And I said, who do you know? He said, well, there's this guy called Barry Poynton who, you know, he's not easy to manage. I said, give me his number, I'll ring him. And honestly, you know, like two people that are opposites get on instantly, and you could trust Barry with your life. Man City fans will never know what he did for that club, because he has so much belief. You know, if Barry said it was Tuesday and it was Wednesday, you'd probably believe it was Tuesday, right? He sold the club magnificent. We had nothing to sell, and he did it, right? Because we're competing against the best marketing name in the world at the time, Man United. They're winning triples and one thing another, you know.
Class of 92s in the first
exactly,
team.
The class of 92s is...
You can show the parents
and
a
quite
pathway.
rightly so. Terrific bunch of players are in your face, which is fine. What a great achievement for that. So we had nothing to beat, really. We had to start from scratch. So Barry was the first appointment that we made, and it was just a question of having a look at everything. I always remember after 6 months, Moira's a Man City fan, as you know. I went home and I said, I've made the biggest mistake in my life. I said, the place is terrible. I said, I should have stayed.
And that's coming from Oldham, yeah?
Yeah, that's coming from Oldham. And she said, do you know something? You're always telling people how good you are. Why don't you go and sort it out? So I said, oh, right, okay, that's it. Anyhow, so I sat down, and funny enough, Dennis Stewart had just joined the board, and he came to see me. And he said, you know, because obviously he had a blue running through his veins from his time as a player, etc. And
he scored a winning goal in the League Cup final.
In the League Cup final, I think it's voted the best overhead kick. Well, it was overhead kick, wasn't it? So we sat down. I said, Dennis, look, it's a mess. I'm working on this report because we need to look at the structure. If you get the structure right, you have a chance. I said, you know, there's no job descriptions. There's people doing what they want. I said, give me till February. So that's when I did it. I started in July. I had this report to go to the board in February, and it was, you know, sort of Man City youth development the way ahead. That was
so this isn't this. I remember coming to City's academy. I must have been 14, so that must be 96, 97. And I remember
97 you came.
97. I remember though coming into Platt Lane, which was a community hub.
Yes,
It was after a certain time, you'd had like people using the gym from the local Moss Side community. Yeah. And I do remember just in between the AstroTurf and where that gym kind of indoor got built. Yeah. The porta cabins being on the side there, because I remember if you had to go and speak to us or you called us in to speak to any of us, you'd have to walk up the little stairs to go in. I think the kit rooms were in and around that somewhere.
It was all, we didn't have anything. Yeah. I mean, even at the time, the ladies that looked after the laundry didn't consider it was their job because they've got nothing to do with it.
Well, they were over at Main Road.
They were over at Main Road, and I had to take the kit over there to get them to wash it. So that was a step forward because it meant that the team managers weren't. And the setup was that the team manager wasn't a coach, but he took the team on a Sunday and somebody coached them during the week. So there was no unity or anything. So it wasn't a difficult job to sort out. It was just how you do it. And then obviously I looked at different people there and I thought, we need a leader on the coaching setup. And, Alex Gibson was fantastic, totally different than me, which is great because I wanted everybody to challenge all the time and be bigger and better than me, if you like. So Alex came in to lead our coaching team. Frankie Bunn, who we've mentioned, Paul Power, who's played and he's won a championship, the Premiership medalist it would be now with Everton, terrific lad. And then we had a younger coach, which was Steve Ayres, to work with the younger lads because he could demonstrate well and all the rest of it. Barry was the real key and eventually we brought in another guy called Terry John to run our junior academy. But this was like 3, 4, 5 years down the line because we had no money. Mm-hmm. Our budget was 358,000 and then we got 158 or something like that from the Football League. And because we got that money, we had to be audited every year, which was a nightmare. However, that was part of the job.
Well, your brewery, you're working for the brewery.
Exactly, I was a better bookkeeper than they were, So, no, it was, but that was the thing. And, I always felt, I used to sit back and watch, because I always felt I was at my best when I wasn't busy, if that doesn't sound stupid, because you're always busy. But in other words, thinking time, creating the next trend, being ahead of the game, that's what we always try to do. And so, although I love coaching, I realised that job couldn't be a coach. You had to be the plate spinner.
Manager.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to be the manager of it. And therefore, because if you didn't manage or communicate with the decision makers, i.e. the board and the chairman, it doesn't matter how good your ideas were. So the first people to get on board, a bit like I used to use the analogy of the space program. It fascinated me. People in Houston used to hug each other every time a man went on the moon. But without the people in Houston, you wouldn't have got the man on the moon. So all the attention was to Neil Armstrong, etc. But it was a team effort. And I think...
Well, there's the famous quote there, isn't there? Somebody walking through asked, there's a woman changing the bin at NASA.
Right,
and they ask her, what's your job? What do you do here? And she says, I help put people on the moon.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they knew that every single role led to, obviously...
Yeah, so, I always think that you set your policies out, then the first target is your decision makers, because if they don't buy into it, and luckily the chairman was David Bernstein at the time, and he had a very accountant-like mind, and he always wanted to see things down on paper. So the fact that the local government situation enabled me to put reports together and so on, that was good because that was the draft I gave him, and he couldn't believe it. The fact that people had got job descriptions, there was a line at chain of command. I always remember one chapter 10 I put in something of the lines that people's contribution to the youth setup at Manchester City at the present time is one of apathy and self-preservation. Hence the need for a chain of command and job descriptions. I'll never forget that. And he loved all that. So he worked together. Obviously, Dennis was the football connection on the line. Chris Bird was our sort of operations manager. All these people are probably not getting the recognition that they should do in terms of how well Manchester City are going now, which is obviously for the fans is terrific.
Well, I had Chappie on last week, and I was saying he doesn't realise how much he kept our dressing room going at times, and there's this is the thing, obviously, John Wardle gets a lot of praise because financially he was keeping the club afloat in a tough period. But you forget, certainly when you watch City last night and all the success of the treble last year, people forget all of those hundreds and contributions when nobody's watching, when they've got to be out in a pissing down rain as you usually get in Manchester on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, and you're going above and beyond the call of duty. And now, the club's moved on into a completely different space, and it's kind of forgotten all of those great people who've put the hard work in to get the club where it is today.
Well, I mentioned Barry, and I can't speak highly enough of Barry and Alex, etc. Terry John worked under Barry, if that's the right terminology. I never thought about structures in that sense. We're all equal.
Yeah, the kind of hierarchy.
But Terry's job was to get into the schools, because we knew we couldn't trawl around the world. We had no money. So what we decided, and Stockport's a great example now, isn't it, when you think Palmer, Foden, Menu, so on. So Terry's job was to get into the schools and get us the best kids into the club. Obviously, we used to call that the junior academy because they hadn't signed then until they were 9. And we used to always do on a Friday night, Tuesday night and Friday night. I always made a point of being there. And whenever Terry was coaching the kids, I always walked onto the pitch, not as a big ego man or anything like that, because you don't sign a 9-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid, you sign his parents. And the fact that it's 8 o'clock on a Friday night and the guy that runs the place is still there, that was great, And then, of course, if it was raining, I got off the pitch and went back in the office and watched from
we could look from that glass window.
Right, it was great. And I used to have this little joke with Terry. And when it was raining, I'd always ring him and I could see him muttering under his breath, fumbling for his flipping phone. And I said to him, he said, "Oh, what's up, Jim?" I said, "Nothing really." I said, "I just see this bit of paper I'm waving at you." He said, "Yeah." He said, "What is it?" I said, "It's your P45 unless you get that little left winger, that little left-footed lad signed up." That was Phil Foden. And, the nice thing is, Phil Foden probably doesn't know anything about me because he was the key. And that was one of the things I used to insist on, that every kid that signed came into my office. I'd sit him down on the settee with his mum and dad, and I'd tell him right away, and I meant it, "You're more important than me or any member of staff, because if you don't grow beyond me, we haven't done a good job." And, that I've said to you, when I first met you again, I was in awe of you because of what you'd achieved in football, And Moira loves you because you call her Mrs. Cassell, which is, and respect her and always ask how she is, so she loves that.
You're going to ruin my reputation here for having a go at women. I've worked hard to get this sexist, misogynist tag. Jim.
No, but that's it. And, we always valued our players. Our players were far more important than us. Our staff were more, I cannot praise the staff enough because, without good people, you're not going anywhere. And although we didn't have money and facilities, we decided we could invest in good people. And that's what we did. And I was backed to the hilt by the club. David Bernstein was terrific. And he used to say to me, "James, when are we getting a return on our investment?" I said, "Chairman, they cannot play in the first team at 14. But I promise you, we will produce players." And because I had total confidence in our system, I had total confidence in myself and of course the staff, who were the real key to it. Everybody, in all the time I was at City, I've never had a parent say to me, if we've had to release sadly a lad, or that you've not seen enough of him, because I was there all the time.
So I want to get back to the success that academy had, because in terms of keeping the club afloat, certainly the money that was generated from player sales at a time that was very, very financially difficult for City certainly kept the club in existence. That academy churning out in the end a lot of top talent, who obviously we'll go on to discuss. So how do you go, Jim, from being chief scout at Oldham 82, obviously riding the crest of the Oldham wave into the Premier League, being co-founders of the Premier League and surviving for a number of years, to turning up at Man City at 96, 97? 96, 97 as the head of director of the academy. How'd you go from being chief scout to director of the academy?
Well, basically, I'd never had an ambition, truthfully, to go back into football because it's so precarious. I didn't get married till late in life, and obviously your family comes first with everything, doesn't it? And I remember I'd done 19 years service I was up to principal officer status, which was quite a good job. I was
nice pension coming.
in charge of the park, maintenance and everything. So it was.
So you're park ranger, are you there?
No. I was. It was great, honestly. I tell you, I used to drive around the borough and the parks feeling proud, because I used to discuss with the park keepers, what do you want to make your park better? And they love that. So again, it's just involving people, isn't it? So when we went in the Premiership with Oldham, the manager Joe came to me and said, Jim, we can't have a part-time chief scout. He says, why don't you do it full-time? I said, Joe, everybody knows you. If you lose your job, you'll get a job tomorrow. I said, nobody knows me. Who am I going to? I'm going to be out of work. I've got a 5-year-old kid, a 4-year-old lad, and one on the way. And I said, I'm 44. Where am I going to get a job from if it goes wrong? Anyhow, we had a chat, Maureen and myself, and she said, look, you've got to do what you want to do. And that's when we decided I wouldn't fail through lack of effort, ability. You can't do anything about that. So in hindsight, that was the best decision I made, because I stayed in the game till I was 66, as you know. And it was terrific. So that was without realising it, going full-time at Oldham was virtually the apprenticeship for, without being disrespectful to Oldham, for going to a bigger club. And a bigger club that was in turmoil management-wise at the time. I mean, it really was. When we talk about no provision to wash the kit, no systems in place. If you wanted anything, you just asked somebody to get it. There was no order book or anything. And that's when
missing.
That's when David Bernstein really brought true order.
I remember that club. So I remember Francis Lee, Peter Swales. Yeah. And then it kind of settled down under Bernstein. He kind of gave it a real steady foundation.
Because he got people around him on the boardroom who were there. I've mentioned Chris Bird, I've mentioned Dennis Stewart, John Wardle and David Makin, who were terrific with the funding of everything. And obviously the chairman brought everybody together. Dennis's role was to view the football side of it. Chris was the chief operations officer. So there was a really good team together there, and they put the foundations in for where we are today now. And so again, like we probably did. I always think, I love any sport, athletics, but the one that everybody knows is Roger Bannister, because he broke the mould, didn't it? He was the first man to do it. So, people have gone on and can do it much, much quicker now, and one thing or another, but how good are the people that put the foundations in, So everybody should get great reward, particularly the chairman who pulled it all together. So that was good. My role was a lot simpler. It was just basically to try and get the best players you could, develop them, and, create the opportunity, the belief, if you like, because we had to, first of all, change the culture, because the culture was 90% losers. The very first meeting I had on the very first day, I got 12 people together who were scouts, and that was the team, right? And I said, we're going to have a real go at this, because there's plenty of players about. There's loads of players in the Manchester area. We can't go much further than that, but the Northwest was our area. And they were saying, yeah, but we don't really do that, because Man United will get them, or Liverpool. I said, forget them. We're the team in town now. We're going to have a go at this, because we'll back ourselves to make better decisions, or good decisions for the club, and maybe even better decisions than the people that are our competitors. So that's how you came to the club in the first place. You were released. Somebody considered you that you weren't good enough to be a Premiership player. We looked at you and thought, well, it's better than what we've got. You know what I mean? So, and always you were going to be a pro player. Never a doubt in my mind. I would say, in all honesty, because that's why we have a great relationship, because we've always been truthful. If somebody had said to me, do you think Joey will be a Premiership player? I would have said, no, I think he'll always be a great pro player, and he'll play till his legs let him down. So, that's where your ambition, as we talked about earlier, took you on ahead of your ability.
Yeah, and that belief and drive, and obviously having them setbacks at a younger age, because I respond really, really well to when you tell me I can't do something. I'm like, I'll show you.
Yes.
And if I'd have had, I was well considered, and that's how I knew, because Alex Gibson, who you ended up at Iron, who was a fantastic coach, played and coached my dad at Warrington Town when they got to the FA Vars final. And then when I was in the England kind of youth setup at Padgate, all the clubs in the Northwest, I was at Everton at the time, I'd send 7 or 8 of their best kids to the England trials. So I always, when I was 11, 12, 13, I was well considered, and obviously knew Alex from going to Padgate, and they put the sessions on. You wanted him, you're with the best of the Northwest, and then the Lilleshall trials come through. So obviously you get whittled down, and I was the last player out of Everton. There was only me and Neil Dans from Liverpool and me from Everton, from the 2 big clubs in this city, who got to the final trial. I didn't get in, and Neil Dans did, so he got a scholarship. I think he left Liverpool and signed for Blackburn and got a pro contract. And so the head of the academy at Everton then was Ray Hall, and we had a coach called Darryl Wainwright, who came from Stoke, who I had a fantastic relationship with. Barry Poyton was our recruitment guy. And then within 6 to 8 weeks of me getting knocked back at the last stage for Lilleshall to go to the national school, I was released by Everton because Neil Dewsnip had come back from the FA and had a different plan, and I wasn't part of it, So I'd gone from nearly getting in the national school and nearly being considered one of the best 20 players in the country at my age category to you're not good enough, you're not big enough, and we're going to release you. And I remember being down because I'm an Evertonian and gutted, and I got released, I think, about 6:30 in the night, because I remember getting a phone call from my dad to say, look, they only called me mum, me nan and my dad, said that they didn't want us there for this meeting. And obviously released, I think, 13 of us on that night out of the 18-man squad. And within 45 minutes, an hour, Barry Poyton was on the phone. He'd found out I'd been released and was phoning me saying, do you fancy training at Platt Lane tomorrow? Come up. And when you were that low, I was distraught, devastated. And I just remember thinking, wow. It's only now when I look back at it and I think how good Barry was at what he was doing, to have his finger on the pulse, to know who was going to come out, when they were coming out, and within an hour. And I think 5 or 6 of our team turned up from Everton, turned up at training at Man City the next night.
The other one that we wanted to sign was Phil Jagielka. And Phil's an August.
He got released with me.
Yeah, he did. He's an August birthday. Time, And of course, if you remember, there was only 3 teams, so he couldn't have played. I can't remember the birthday.
He was a Sheffield boy, though, so he was travelling over to train at Everton.
Yeah, but
at the
we
time.
would have taken him if we'd have had 2 teams, and we didn't. And of course, the budget was so tight for scholarships and everything. And Barry and I often talk about Phil Jagielka, that we're at a birthday, if you like.
Because he's August. He's actually old. He's a year older than me in school, right. But there's only about 8 days between us.
Yeah, you see, you look at Daniel Sturridge. His birthday is the 1st of September.
I'm 2nd.
Right. Yeah. So he could play in the Youth Cup a year older, in a sense, So because they changed the date, it used to be August, then it went to September. So Rhys Day, his birthday was the 31st of August.
So he has to play the year above,
he couldn't play in the Youth Cup. And the dates can define people's early development. And sometimes people make a judgment on the standard that they're playing in now instead of the potential. So
they've changed this a little bit now because they are putting people based on size and different birth categories.
Yeah, I've never worried about that. I always thought if somebody's got some either mentally or physically a great left foot, any quality that they've got, don't worry about anything they can't do. Just look at what they can do, because if you can do something well, you're going to develop that as you go through. And your great strength was your belief, right? And the other thing, as a player that I remember as a young player, you always wanted to play forward. And a bit like De Bruyne, you gave the ball away a lot, because positive players do give the ball away because they're looking to create. It makes me laugh sometimes when I see the stats and we say, look, he's had 95% retention. Well, if you play it square and backwards, you will do,
I always see, I don't know where that came from. Obviously, I have a good foundation in Everton's academy, but I always see my job as a midfielder is to risk the ball. Obviously, if you're a defender or whatever, you've got to be a bit more safe with it. But my job, if you're my striker or my winger, I have got to take risks with it. Yeah, it's nice to pass backwards, sideways, come off the pitch and I haven't give the ball away. Yeah. But what the fuck have you actually done with it? Absolutely. You might as well have given it away 90% of the time, but you've created in the 10%, you've kept it 3 goals. Yeah. And I see a lot of people now and the stats come in and they're obsessed with keeping the ball. And I'm like, that's not your job. No. I always found, and I worked this out at Burnley at 31, the stats would come in, it'd be 86% completion. I'd be like, that's not good enough. That I need to be at 75. That means I'm risking the ball one every 4 times to get it, which is a nice ratio. If I drop below 75, I'd been too loose with me passing. If I was at 85 and above, I'm like, I haven't risked that ball enough. I need to take more chances to get my offensive players opportunities. So just going back to that, Jim, in terms of you're now at City. As I say, I don't know how you've managed to do this, and I put it down to your great talent, but you've ended up hiring the England kind of youth coach, who's obviously clearly a talented coach to run your coaching department, and Alex Gibson, who's a phenomenal coach and learned so much from Alex. And then you've got Barry Poyton, who, let's be honest, is as good in terms of recruitment. He had the amount of Irish people he get in, Scottish people. And I think back to all the people he brought to Everton when I was at Everton and all the people he brought to Man City when I was at City. There wasn't much that Barry missed in terms of having his finger on the pulse for young talent.
Nothing. He was terrific. And as I said earlier, he was a great foil for me in a sense because we had total trust in each other. Still do. Still keep in touch with him. But you're right. You just mentioned the 2 players that were really big keys in our development. Alex was working at the FA at the time and had helped coach England to win the European 17s. So he had a terrific pedigree, but he was a teaching coach, which is what we needed. We needed a developer of the coaches as well. I could have done it, but I didn't have the time. So you needed somebody who was probably better than me to do it. Barry better than me at recruitment, but what I needed to do was bring them all together. So that was the team, and I remember Joe Rowe was the manager,
So did Joe hire you, or have you gone in and then Frank Joe's
Clark,
come?
Frank Clark.
I remember Frank being there, ex-Notts Forest.
Yeah, good guy. Alan Hill. Frank
so
Clark
you go in
Alan
and Joe's still at Oldham?
Joe was at, I think he just lost his job at Everton. Yeah. Because it was...
he won the Cup in 95. Yeah. He just lost the job,
What I decided to do was... Barry was in.
He never tried to get you to Everton? Ray Hall's running the academy there.
Ray was great. Ray's still a good mate. So,
Ray's done a good job there.
So Barry had come in and, we needed to get this coaching structure because, funny enough, there's 3 elements to being successful, if you like, or 3 of the elements. One is like running a hotel. If you go to a hotel and you're not looked after, you don't go back again. Don't matter how good the room is, you're looked after at reception, aren't you? So we needed to get the coaching right, knowing that the recruitment was the most important part of the job. So the coaching had to be put in place first, then recruitment, and then retention. Because if you if you don't look after them, the well-being after that, you've no chance. So what I did, we didn't have a lot of money, and I said, I hope I'm not offending Alex in any way. I mean, he had a terrific ego as a coach, which you need to do. And I took a chance. I took a chance on us being successful, and I took a chance on the whole structure because Joe wanted me to do the senior scouting just to finish that season off until he got his feet under the table at City.
So when did he come in? 98?
He came 99? February, I think, February 98, something like that.
Yeah, because they win the Gillingham playoff final.
That's right, yeah. So I was doing the 2 roles, and therefore I said, look, I'll do this till the end of the season, but Joe, the real job for me now is academies, right? And I did that, and I said, look, bring Alex in, and let's, I need it. The salary structure was so low at City at the time, and I said, I'll pay him more than me. Right? So that was to get him. I
think when I turned up, was Alex there? I'm sure he was there. So Alex, he must have been Frank Clark who brought Alex in?
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't actually. It was Paul Power and it was Paul,
Yeah, Alex came after you. Yeah. So what I did, we didn't have a massive structure. I said, look, this structure, if we put it in place, will last City for 10 years. There's no doubt. And I said, it really is a big key to get this. So we sorted his salary out. I didn't, I knew what I was up to. Mm. Barry was then working beaver-like, if you like, on the recruitment. And that was the start of the process of getting it together. Then, we had Paul Power, who was already full-time, and that was another thing, because Paul had been brought in to do another job that was supposed to be an academy, which wasn't quite in line with the criteria laid out by the FA. So we had to unpick that without offending Paul, because, he's still a good mate to this day. He's living in France now, which is great. And out of respect for him as a pro, I don't think you've got to have great respect for people who were in the game.
Well, he's had a nice balance there. You've got Gibbo, who was a frustrated footballer but a good coach, a teaching coach.
Yes.
Frankie Bunn, PP, Paul Power,
both
other side of him, who both played at a high level.
So that was the great team. And then later on, when we got a bit more money, we got Stephen Ayres to look after the younger element, because he was more in keeping.
Side,
So that was the start of how it all came together. We only had 11 staff ever when I was academy manager, and you didn't need any more at that stage. We didn't have people analysing everything, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but basically, if you can't do my job and sit and watch a game and work out what's wrong with it, then what do you shouldn't be in that role.
Well, it's like looking at racehorses, isn't it? I mean, people talk about paralysis by analysis, and I do think we've got to be careful in the modern game not to get obsessed with numbers.
I think the biggest danger is that, we've talked about football people, and I only ever want, 16 quid was my great story, right? I may have been overpaid at 16 quid, I don't know, but...
definitely underpaid.
It got me into the game, and that's where I wanted to be. Now I see people coming into the game and changing careers for the salary. I wanted to be in football for football. You wanted to be in football for football.
We'd have done it for nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. So, to me, once you bring in a different element into the profession, it needs managing very, very carefully. Otherwise, they don't understand the real purpose of the job and start to change it so that they understand it, which undermines the people that are in doing it in the first place, i.e. the football people. And, I don't like this changing title of the manager. The manager is the key. He is the key to the club. The football, and people don't go to watch somebody putting a commercial deal on. That's a bonus from having good players and good management. So we're undermining, I think. People can challenge this statement, I suppose, but I think that head coach undermines the manager's role to me. I think the manager has to make the decisions. Director of football, sporting directors. We can go on defining different roles, but basically, there's how you get to where you get is through the football, right? And the reason it's terrific to go and watch Premiership football now, particularly obviously at the Etihad, because we still go and watch the games, is because of the players we've got. City now are going to be, as a fan and as an ex-employee, I think there's danger signs because we're going to lose our best players soon through age. De Bruyne, Walker, Silva wants to go, who's been all players that have been fantastic servants on the pitch. What's going to happen when you change the environment, when the manager moves on? So, I'm sure that the way the club has been managed, they're forward thinking and preparing for this. But as a fan, you think, we saw it happening across the city when Alex Ferguson left, that maybe their reign was going to come to an end, and it has. So they've had huge problems dealing with the aftermath of probably the best manager that we've seen. So, I think City should learn a lesson from that.
Liverpool have got it with Klopp coming this summer.
Yeah, well, Klopp has done what Shankly did. He managed the City, didn't he? He's got a relationship with the fans. He was the first to get the players running down to throw themselves on the floor in front of the cop, etc. Terrific. Football is emotion, and that's what we all love about it. That's why we're here today. We just love. I want the next generation to be better than us, right? Of coaches, and to do that, it used to make me laugh when I used to do my coaching badges, because you get a topic. Well, even now, I'm going back a few years, but you get a topic now. You can go and Google it if you want and get your session. I would just throw a coach on and say, there you are, there's 5-a-side going on. Coach, what you see? And I bet most of them wouldn't know what they're doing, right? Because that is coaching what you see is your knowledge of football, and that's what you do in a game. Where is the problem? You know, I mean, it's only a slight misfortune to probably City's best player in recent years, Kevin De Bruyne, that he put the chance over the bar to make it 2-1. You know, the margins are small, aren't they? You know, so reading how did, you know, Guardiola must have known exactly what we was going to expect. Didn't quite get away with it last night. You know, penalties is cruel for either way it is. So you know, it's just one of those games. It wasn't Man City's night last night. I don't think they should throw all the bathwater out now. We've been fantastic.
Yeah,
it's upsetting for fans, but these things happen in life.
It's tough to go back-to-back European Cups.
Oh,
certainly when you've not won one in your history before.
Exactly,
you know?
I'd love that to have happened. Only Notts Forest of the English teams have done it on the Brian Clough.
But again, the fact that it's such a difficult thing to win one. Never mind go and back it up the next year. And that was what I wanted to go back to there, Jim, because you turn up, as you say, 96, 97 at Man City, and the academy looks like it's in disarray. You know, as you say, kit and everything. You have to wash their own kit. But the weirdest thing before that. Did they win when they had Paul Lake and David White? They won the FA Youth Cup in what, 84? Was it 85, 86?
Man City was the best youth setup in the mid-80s, and Ken Barnes was there then. He was chief scout and sort of probably did my role in a different way because there was no academies in the
85, 86.
Yes,
they beat
that's right.
Man United in the two-legged format.
Yeah. So they were great. Got a load of great players out of that. For some reason. Then of course the rules changed. Now for some reason they didn't manage it very well.
What do you mean the rules changed?
Well, the academies came into place, didn't they? So you know, charter for quality, etc. And I don't think some clubs manage that very well. So Man City had gone from being the best to then being nothing, and my job was to try and get.
Scout? Do you remember the little scout? Was it Eric
Mullender?
Eric Mullender,
yeah.
Remember, it just popped in my mind.
He's
'cause he always used to talk to me about this City youth team, and he was brilliant with us, Eric.
He is lovely, great. Another one of the people that have been at the club, and he had his 90th birthday this year. Great.
He's seen so many talented players come through over the years, Eric. He was an anorak of
and he's still okay.
Players,
I rang his wife Jean not long ago just to see because I'd not seen him at the games. Obviously, he doesn't get to the games now, and so he's still Eric's still doing well.
So you're taking over, and they've obviously the bar's been set by that group in 85, 86. I always heard about Paul Lake. I know his career suffered with injury, but obviously David White. Was Niall Quinn in that team? I don't know, that youth cup team.
No, it wasn't.
I'm trying to think who was in that youth cup team. Who came through and made it.
Redmond.
Steve Redmond, Scouser,
Redmond was in
Go on, click on that. No, click on that youth cup one.
Yeah.
Where are they now? That'll be it, that's it.
Well, Andy Hinchcliffe was in that, I think.
Oh, Newcastle.
Yeah.
Andy Hinchcliffe,
David Beresford, the other fullback, I'm sure that went to Newcastle.
John Beresford.
Was
he there?
I think he was at City,
boy?
Yeah.
Let's see who's in this team.
So,
because then I'm going to talk to you about when you complete the Holy Grail, because that was always chased when you win it again.
That was always
Ben Mee was the skipper.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah.
I was just trying to find a team. So that's the thing for me is how a club can go from having a fantastic youth academy and within, basically a decade. It's in disarray and it's having to be rebuilt.
I think sometimes, everything reflects the way.
Ian Brightwell,
of course, yeah. He's a good lad. Ian's still around.
I know that.
His mum was an Olympic gold medalist in Tokyo in the 800 metres.
Oh, right. So he's got good genetics there then.
Yeah, and his dad was a 400 metres runner.
Yeah, there's not, Paul Lake, obviously David White, as you pointed out there, Andy Hinchcliffe, Steve Redmond. The rest of them not really household names. I thought there'd be a few more who went on to be...
but it's not bad. If you get 4 out of your youth side that goes on to play in the top level, you've done brilliantly.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, I always remember coming into the academy at City. The one thing that always sticks with me was when I sat down with you, and I think you had given me a non-contract. I didn't get a YTS. And I remember Bunnies and you addressing the group our first day of pre-season as young apprentices. And they said, listen, if you listen to us every day and you do what we tell you to do, we can't guarantee you're going to play in our first team. There's no guarantees of that. But what we will do, we'll give you the skills to go on and have a career within the game. I don't know what level that's going to be. That's going to be over to using the work he's done. And I just remember, I always remember that thinking, okay, if it's going to be, it's up to me. It's about the work I'm going to put in here. And I was a little bit behind the 8 ball based on some of the lads in our team. But and I knew I was going to do everything I could to, you know, if they were going to cut corners or not do the work, I knew I wasn't, and I was going to do it. And that is ultimately what allowed me to get in position to have a decent, you know, career at a decent level. But I always remember that first conversation with you when you said, look, listen to us and you'll have a career in the game. But as I say, if you'd have looked at any youth team, you know, new batch of players there, if one made it into your first team or 2 made it into your first team, it was considered a really, really successful group.
Yeah, but there was no frills, was there? There was no corny sayings or anything like that. No, in fact, you know, there was no fancy signs around the place. What we did do was put a photograph up of the lads once they played in the Premiership, or the first team as it was, because even if you played against Barcelona in a friendly, that didn't count. It had to be an official game, FA Cup, League Cup or whatever, you know, to get on the wall of fame, if you like.
So that was the thing. You obviously had that famous Youth Cup winning side at City, and City's academy has always served them well, because even when we got there, you had your Richard Edgills, you had the Whitleys, Jeff and Jim,
Michael Brown.
You had lots of lads who'd come through, even though City's academy wasn't fully functioning. You know, as you describe when you turn up. There was still a hotbed of talent in and around there and opportunities for people to kind of make it through. But when I come in, you know, 14, 15, turn up, the year above me was ended up being Shaun Wright-Phillips, Terry Dunfield, Rhys Day, Chris Killen, Leon Mike. Yeah. And then the group in front of them, they wasn't the most talented group in terms of, the only real good player I can remember from that group was David Laycock, who was a good player, Dave. Yeah. And I remember being on the coaches with them, and there was a couple of lads, there was a couple of brothers who ended up becoming physios. I ran into them, I can't remember the name, centre halves. They were lovely lads.
They were from North Wales,
But the group ahead of us was kind of the first, you know, Jim Cassell, Barry Poit and Alex Gibson group, which contained Wrighty.
Well, Wrighty was the first one.
Well, how did you find Shaun?
Well, I'll tell you what, he was released by Notts Forest, similar to yourself, and so obviously Bradley left as well. Always when you get 2 brothers, the younger one's going to be the better one. But I remember Barry bringing Shaun into the office, and I said to him, you know, I hope you enjoy it, one thing or another, usual stuff. And then I said to Barry, where's the older one? He said, he is the older one. Right. So,
I wind them up about it all the time. I send them pictures on Instagram of like little midgets running around.
No, I always say to Shaun, when you know, obviously I've never rung any of the lads that have done well. I only keep in touch with the lads that I think need help, or they keep in touch with me one way or the other. And, you know, I say to Shaun, realistically, he probably did more for us than we did for him, because he was the first one to break through. He got sold to Chelsea. Whether he wanted to or not, I don't know. But he got sold to Chelsea, and that money, I'm told, saved the club from really being in having major problems. So, you know, he did a fantastic job in that respect. Terry Dunfield was the next one to make his debut. But as you said, you just mentioned there, Leon Mike played games in the first team, Chris Killen, Dixon Atuhu, Chris Shuka,
Rhys Day.
They were terrific. You know, you can go. I mean, Stephen Jordan, terrific role he played. Remember, he had a great game at Old Trafford in a derby. So you know, all those lads. I'm rightly say, without being unkind to any of them, we must have created something within them to give them that opportunity to go on, because they were nearly all rejects, or nobody wanted them at one point, and nobody should ever feel that they're not valued. And so again, that comes back to, I suppose, as a staff, our leadership style. We genuinely, honestly feel that the players were more important than us. We used to sacrifice lots of things for the players. We never worried too much about pay rises or anything like that. So it worked out really well. And for some reason, we never lost any staff. We never lost any staff out of the time I was academy manager, other than if they got promoted within the club. That was it. And, you know, the medical team, Robin Sadler, you know, was terrific. Brought him in as a young lad. He wasn't ready to come in, you know. So Jeff Ross from New Zealand, great lads. And we used to say, you know, don't think you're a physio because you're not. You're a recruiter, even though you're a top physio. Because if a kid gets an injury and his parents see him being well looked after, communicated through, that's what makes them sign for Man City. We had to make sure that club was better than any other club at caring for them. So that was our ethos, if you like, you know, that people really mattered.
So that must have been the big breakthrough. Well, I remember being inspired by Wrighty. Obviously, they were the group ahead of us, and it was a really talented group, the group in front of us. As I say, the Laycock group, the group in front of them. I didn't really see that kind of talent or competition, but certainly I genuinely believe that was your first group. It was. In terms of, you know, it was coming to fruition. They were, as I say, Leon Mike had been to Lilleshall. Yeah. Obviously, Chris Killen, I remember coming in on trial. Chris Ishuka coming in on trial. Dunfield kind of added big weight because he was the Canadian kind of prodigy. He
was already there, Terry, when I arrived,
Was he already?
Yeah, he was,
And then obviously Shaun comes in, and Shaun's the first one into the first team in terms of, I think he was the kind of new academy, the one who broke through the dam. Because once Wrighty went, and we all knew Wrighty was a special player, but he was small. So it gave all of us belief to go, okay, if you can be that size, like a few of us are small, but we're going to be bigger than Wrighty. I mean, it's not hard not to be.
He was like yourself, though, that he just loved football. Shaun Wright never asked for a penny. You know, like you hear stories now about this and that and money. Shaun, I think his birthday is the 25th of October, and his mum, Sharon, I rang her to say, look, he's 17, why don't you come up to the game and we'll sign him pro. I told you I'd look after him. And you know, we signed him on just a basic. Never asked for a signing on fee. Never, just wanted to be a player, and that's what you love. All the people that have never asked for anything are the ones that have really gone on because they're there for the right reasons, which is what we were discussing earlier about people in the game. It wasn't a chore working in football, was it? No. It was fantastic. You know, I mean, I just couldn't wait to get in the morning, and I used to say I'm first in and last out. That's how it should be. You're the person that is perceived to be the boss, if you like, and therefore if I set the trend and the tone, then the others had no excuse to not do the same.
So when you signed Shaun, who's flagged him up? Who's spotted him? Was it the Ian Wright connection?
No. It was down to one of Barry's contacts at Notts Forest. He said they're releasing two brothers and. You should have a look at them. And actually, when I saw, you know, Shaun's physique, if you like, I remember we arranged a couple of games against Tranmere, and he did very well. And I thought at the time, without being disrespectful to Tranmere, they were always tough. Warwick Warwick was terrific. Warwick did a fantastic job at Tranmere. Always had a good youth set up, and he did well. He did all the right things, and because we didn't have a lot of great quality in the club at that age at the time, it was a no-brainer to take him. And you know, I remember after Frank left, Joe came in and he said, have you got anything yet? I said, no, I've got a young kid who's going to be with you in pre-season. I said, he's only small, but I said, Joe, when you see him, you won't forget him. And that was Shaun. And
I think he scored away at Millwall. I think he scored his first goal away at Millwall. And I just remember everybody in the club buzzing because it was like, right, there's our first success in terms of, because of the way he's built the culture, we all wanted each other to do well. And someone else doing well was almost like the gauntlet threw down to the rest of the group to go, well, if he can do it, can you do it? And again, that academy is a testament to player after player, you know, turning up and performing for the first team when required. But as I say, Shaun, for me, was the first one. As you know, all the other players we named there, Dixon O'Toole, Leon Mike, etc., all went on to have decent careers.
Yeah, they did,
But Shaun break through under Joe in that kind of championship season. He didn't do the Gillingham, you know, Paul Dickoff, Nicky Weaver Cup final. No. It was the next year, right, he broke through. But I do remember him going across with the first team because at that point, Platt Lane became the academy. You had the under-17s on one pitch, under-19s on the other, AstroTurf and small AstroTurf, and kind of indoor in between.
Taxi drivers,
mad fans who were pissed standing outside, waiting for buses, hailing abuse.
Do you know that there was a group of fans that used to come every Saturday? We got a good following because, and you know, they were great. I used to always speak to them, and because we valued their support, they were spreading the message that, hey, City have got it going again now, you know. And the fact that they wanted to come on a Saturday morning and watch the games was testimony to the fact that things were going in the right direction. So they were, to me, part of the whole success. I think if you're going to have success, you've got to involve everybody and treat everybody properly. You know, there were obviously security changed after I left Platt Lane, and you know, people were having to sign in because of obvious problems, but that there was none of that really when we were there.
You could walk in and out.
Absolutely,
remember that big gate, the big iron gate.
Yeah, so it was a different type of thing, but we used to try and make everything that we had as a strength, right? Pitches weren't great with
the fortress.
So we used to say, they can't play on this, right? And everything we turned to our advantage, which I think is what you do in sport. You know, you watch boxers and they stare each other out. They're mates afterwards, but you know, that's the job. I've got to beat you. And every morning, you know, the minute you take your foot off the accelerator, somebody's going to pass you, right? So the intensity, you probably saw it. You know, I used to walk around, I'd see you in the gym with the other lads, get a ball and go and bash it against the wall, because that was a great aid for your coaching, wasn't it? It comes back to you. And likewise with the staff, every day we had a cup of tea to start the day off, and the intensity was there. What are you doing today? What are we doing today? Bump, bump, bump. And at lunchtime, if you notice, we always had our lunch. That was to discuss everything. We never stopped discussing the development of every player.
And that's the thing when you look at it, you know, that attention to detail, that caring above and beyond, not just turning up and I'm here from 9 and I'm going at 6 because that's what it says on my pay slip. You know, that's the one thing that strikes me about Barry Poyton. You know, if he wanted to sign somebody, he'd travel the length and breadth of the world to get in front of the mum and dad to make sure that you know he was getting that kid to come across and be in the academy. And that first group, that breakthrough, as I say, it's only now when you look back, you go, oh my God, that was a talented group in front of us. Obviously, the group that came behind, kind of myself, Brian Murphy, Paddy McCarthy, Glenn Whelan, who made it, Kevin Townsend had a career at Rochdale, and you know, Gary Brown, Stephen Paisley. There was lots of good lads in that
players,
team, but not many kicked on. And then the group behind that, then again, was your kind of Stephen Islands and.
Well, Stephen was terrific, wasn't he? I mean,
talented kid,
again, you judge a player on what they're not going to lose. And I remember seeing him on Wally Range Girls' School where we used to play.
Train and play,
And I used to love the ball be played up for him, and he could control it or he could cushion it. So what a great touch. He's never going to lose that. And probably, I mean, he had one magnificent season where he was Player of the Year. He arrived in the box. I mean, he had great engine, Stephen.
Yeah.
And he arrived in the box when, you know, Martin Peters was recognised as the best from the England team that won the World Cup for his arriving late to score.
That kind of Paul Scholes ghosting in.
Exactly. Scholes was another one. Stephen Highland was right up there. I mean, he could score off either foot. And, you know, not the biggest frame in the world, had he, Stephen? But great engine.
The thing that got me about him, Jim, was he had very few, like De Bruyne's got it, the perfect weight of pass for the through ball.
Yeah.
Like, just some players over it, under it, or whatever. Stevie had that. He had that one where he was really good as well at intercepting it. He would almost set a little trap for you by, he looked like he wasn't looking, he'd try and slip it in the gap, and he was brilliant at. He wasn't a good tackler, but he was brilliant at intercepting the ball. And I would say his biggest strength, I think he had, was that weight of through ball. He had a really fucking top-level through ball.
Do you know, without realising it, we used to use him. If games were tight, as you know, we always used to play 4-4-2 because I felt developing players, if they could understand the system of 4-4-2. Yeah, exactly. But Stephen would give us the flexibility to say, Steve, just go and play free. Just go and find space to play free, you know. And he could do that without losing the shape of the team. So that was his football brain. He was terrific. He was the first one sort of the kids that I could say to, just go and play off the striker or whatever. I'll give you a free role. Because, you know, if you look at it, you know, we can remember the great Beckenbauer, can't we? He was the first one that I recognise. You know, he could run a game from being sweeper or free man as it used to be, because it, you know, John Stones is doing it now for nipping into midfield. It's a modern thing, isn't it?
Didn't do it so well last night, but he tried to. Yeah.
He gave everything. I mean, that was just what it was. But Beckenbauer really was the cream, wasn't he? You know what I mean? And to see him play, you know, he made the game look so easy, didn't he? Bobby Moore in a different way, playing at the back. And now, you know, we've got the difference is the pitches are so good now. You couldn't play some of the systems that are being played now on the mud heaps that used to be. You know, you look at the great Tottenham team of the 60s, and you look at Platt Lane and White Hart Lane. It was a mud heap after.
Just lost Joe Kinnear. Joe managed me at Newcastle. He was in that side. Joe. He was a great guy.
Yeah. So there's nothing new about football. It's just how you apply what you've got.
Oh, well, just try and get me up there if you can. The players who've come out of Man City's academy, Jim, I'm just going to run you through them just to re-jog your memory. Probably.
I brought a list with me.
Have you got the list? Have you got them tattooed on your arm? Have you?
No, Joe, I did. I used to just put them down.
All right. Because it'd be interesting. Do you know how many first team players or internationals did you get, Jim?
28 internationals.
28 full internationals.
Yeah. I always keep this and just. That's the Bible, that's the document, you know, the philosophy and so on.
Oh, your blueprints.
That's what we had them to do. But yeah, I've got here a list of all the lads, all handwritten as well. So,
the best way.
Yeah, you know, you look at Wrighty, Terry Dunfield, Shuka, Etu, Leon Mike, Killen, Tyrone Mears, who've not mentioned.
Tyrone Mears, he's in our group,
There's somebody here I don't know, Joey Barton, I don't know where he's gone. Stephen Jordan, Glenn Whelan. And the nice thing, you know, like Glenn, he's come to the end of his career now. But, you know, I chatted to him when we were down at Bristol. And I said to him, Glenn, you know, you've got so much, 92 caps for Ireland. He's got to stay in the game now as a coach and pass on his knowledge.
You've just gone with the full squad there with John O'Shea.
He'd be great because he's a really good guy, Glenn. Yeah,
good football man.
Yeah, so, you know, Willow Flood, you probably remember Willow, Irish lad, Stephen Elliott, Bradley Wright-Phillips, Nedum Onuoha. Nedum Onuoha was the first boy we signed when I went to City. And his mum, Antonia, was a fantastic supporter. Sadly, she's not with us now. But so Nedum was a special...
the first player you signed, was he,
Nedum? And it was, when I say I don't use I, because he was on my way home. He lived on Rochdale Road in Manchester. So I said to Barry, we need to get him signed out. He's Grease Lightning. Yeah. And
he was a sprinter, wasn't he?
He was a sprinter, yeah.
Manchester sprint champion.
And also, you know, again, tops as a lad. The two Delario twins, you know, Jonathan played. Lee Croft, you remember Crofty?
God.
Yeah, Micah, of course. Micah, the best leaper out of all the kids we've ever coached. Magnificent. Probably cost us a Youth Cup by a goal that he scored at Aston Villa. I
put the cross in.
Yeah, did you? I don't.
I put the corner in.
Yeah, and of course Stuart Pearce was manager, and I just said tomorrow I was watching the highlights. I said that's just cost us the Youth Cup because he won't play in the final. Yeah. And he missed the first leg, which we lost 3-0 at Liverpool, and he played in the second leg, and we won 2-0. We should have won 6, but that was it. So we could have won the Youth Cup twice during my tenure there. Ishmael Miller, another kid. That,
Energy,
yeah. You know, Michael Johnson, who could have been, if injuries had been kinder to him.
I think he'd have easily been a full international.
Oh, without doubt. Without doubt. I mean, he had the lot, didn't he? He could make, score, create as midfield.
Oh, he was
and he looked like a film star on the pitch, Michael. So, you know, I always think he was silk, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a good player.
Yeah, so then we've got Sturridge, you know, Daniel Sturridge, technically the best English striker at the time.
Yeah.
Daniel could have played with anybody in a small area. His problem came when the game changed and we wanted front players pressing. Great with Suarez because Suarez was the wasp and used to go in and Sturridge and very, very good vision as well as being a good finisher, great vision. So, you know, then we've got Casper in goals, Casper Schmeichel. Shalem Logan had a game and had a good career in Aberdeen. Kelvin Atua had a couple of games as well, Dixon's brother. Ched Evans, of course, Ched, Welsh international. Sam Williamson had a great cameo role under Ericsson. He came on as a sub. So Sam did a terrific job, you know, and Ericsson was, Sven-Goran Eriksson was great to work with, as all the managers
Had Chappie
were.
on, Chappie loved him.
All the managers were great in different ways, you know. Vladimir Weiss, talented. Dedrick Biota, Belgium international. Abdi Ibrahim, who's a Norwegian international and should have done better. Greg Cunningham had a great career still at Preston, I think. Alex Nimley, who was a good, played for Nigeria. Javan Vidal played. Ben Mee, of course, who's had a brilliant career as captain of our youth team.
John Guidetti won the youth cup.
Yeah, he was captain. John Guidetti played for Sweden. Chris Chandler had an odd game. He finished up at Carlisle. Ryan McGiven, Northern Irish international. I don't know, Reese Wabara, I think, played. He's very successful now. Reese is a fashion designer, so he probably don't need football.
Didn't get that off you then?
No, he didn't. Definitely not. What are you saying? And Emery Hughes played for Wales. So yeah, those are the lads that played, and then, you know, a lot of them went on.
You've got page after page there who've made a league appearance. Are they lads who've played in the league?
Yeah. Those are the
which is incredible when you think the money that's generated, you know, for the club, certainly, you know, if they haven't been good enough for the first team to then, you know, give a revenue stream elsewhere. It must make you incredibly proud, that, Jim.
Over the time, I mean, I think it does me, but the staff as well. And you probably don't realise at the time, because you just go in and you love the game, you love the job. And, you know, you probably don't realise how well we did, in a sense, you know what I mean? But, I mean, I think we spent on the academy during my tenure as 12 million, but recouped 60-odd million. And Alistair McIntosh used to be the chief exec, and, you know, I used to say to him, I've cost you nothing being here. You know,
should have got a percentage of profit there, Jim.
No, we didn't. But it don't matter. You know, if you're a Manchester lad, and you got the chance to work at one of the Manchester clubs, knowing that we love football as we do, I mean, you know, it was quite, you know, I hope it doesn't sound, it's quite a privilege, really, because you represent a lot of families, you represent a lot of fans, you know, it means a lot to people. I see that in my own household, you know what I mean, how much winning and losing means. And if you're charged with looking after somebody's precious son, you know, as it was, then the least you can do is give it, you know, your best effort. Because I always think, you know, you don't own anything. I had that job, it's gone now, somebody else is doing it, great. You know, in fact, you own your own house till you don't live in it any more than somebody else has it. But you always own responsibility, and I always felt a huge responsibility to give the players and the families the best we possibly could.
So if I said to you, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, obviously the amount of players you must have seen over your time in football, there'll be players who you just go, that's going to be a player. You know, the superstars stand out. You know, obviously the challenge of the job is finding the superstars when they don't look anything or resemble anything like a superstar. So can you name me, let's say, 1, 2 or 3 that you've seen where instantly the first time you saw them, you're like, he's going to be a player?
Yeah, I don't think you can identify that they're going to be a superstar. I think you can identify talent straight away. That's easy. I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they judge players on performance rather than potential. So if you look at potential, then that's what you would say. I mean, again, it's only about a preference for what you see in a player. You know, Micah Richards played for England very young, but at 13 on the pitches at Platt Lane, he looked like, you know, Bambi. You know, but we knew he was going to be an athlete, so you think you can develop him. Most talented, Daniel Sturridge, technically, without any doubt. You know, I love Wrighty because of his attitude straight away. He was always going to make the grade, no doubt at all. Michael Johnson I've referred to as a top talent, and it's just a shame that injuries robbed him and people have seen him play, because he would most certainly have got to the national side.
He has elements of that kind of Paul Lake about him that happened at City, because Paul was cut short with injury.
You know, under Ericsson, and Ericsson was a fantastic supporter of the academy and young players. He loved them, you know, and he had a real purple patch, didn't he, when he was scoring?
Brilliant.
Yeah, he was. So
he came through the season when I was there, and then I left.
Yeah.
And he just flourished. He kind of went into a couple of different gears because he was regularly starting. But I must have played about 15 or 20 games with John O. And I just remember thinking, my God, he's got such great composure, such great balance, can pass off both feet. Wasn't really physical or a tackler, but could do it.
He could do it. He could win it because his football brain was good enough. So
he was a really good player.
I think those three would be the three that you'd sort of think. You know, Wrighty was fantastic because he used to get knocked down. He was the rubber man, wasn't he? You know,
bounce off the floor
and what he could do. He never had a bad game because his attitude was spot on. He could get you a goal, and many of these.
He was quick, so you couldn't go tight to him because he'd shoot from distance as well.
He was.
When you went tight to him, he had a great reaction and really good.
He was unorthodox. People used to say, "Oh, if he had too much time, he'd mess it up." Quite the opposite. He actually did so many things that he saw that we didn't see, and Alex and I used to have lots of conversations because he played non-league, I played a couple of games in the third division, and I said, Al, sometimes we've got to accept that these players see the game better than we do. Daniel Sturridge is a classic to me, because he was his own man on the pitch. You had to coax him sometimes, but what a talent. And clearly, he was going to be an England international. So
I don't think he had a good career, Daniel, but I don't think he got... Because as a young player, I remember him coming over with us when he must have been 17, training with the first team.
Yeah.
He wasn't a great athlete in terms of he didn't like doing the hard stuff, but that was because he was a mercurial talent and he had a cannon in his left foot.
Yeah, that was his thing. If he could have added to his game this closing down better, right? But he was always looking in his eyes. He played to a certain extent. I think Palmer now is a little bit of that. You give him the ball and he's a threat, but I don't think he wins the ball back as well at this stage. Whether he'll add that to his game as maybe a Bernardo Silva does at City or whatever, because they round the ball like flies, aren't they? When they lose it, yeah. So that's the way the modern game is now. You've got to have so much. You've got to be a can opener as well as being able to get the ball back, haven't you? So those are the elements, and that's why nobody. I always think that nobody can say I've done this and I've done that. I mean, there's a million people claim to have done this with players. Basically, I used to say to them, look, I need you to do well because if you don't do well, I'm out of work. So they were without that, and they were our customers. That's how we regarded the families. They were our customers, and we had to look after them. And I think, remaining the staff to keep the feet on the ground. They weren't big time. If we don't do it right, somebody else will have our jobs. So that was keeping yourself humble, if you like, and remembering what you were here for.
Well, I heard a story today, just because we were talking about Sturridge there. Obviously, last night, City lost to Real Madrid on penalties in the Champions League. I was shocked to find out this morning that Haaland, I'm told whether this is true or not, and De Bruyne are asked to be taken off, which shocked me because I always thought if you want your big players ready to decide the big games, and also if it goes to penalties. And then I was told a story this morning about an FA Youth Cup, I think, semi-final for Man City, against Bristol City.
Quarter, I think it was.
Quarter-final. And at 7:30, the star player in the Man City youth team is Daniel Sturridge at that time. Obviously, Ben Mee and that are in there. And he had a crisis of confidence, with 15 minutes to go to kick off, and says he can't play. And I got told a story about you going in as well as the other staff, but predominantly you going in and reassuring him and managing to convince him to play. And then, he was playing left-hand side, and Vladimir Weiss, I think, and David Ball was the front three. And unbeknown late on in the game, as the game's poised, this is after he's had a crisis of confidence and doesn't want to play, locks himself in the toilet, and you have to coax him out. And then later on in that game, he switches wings just off his own because he's not feeling or not thinking he's getting it, and ends up scoring two, one after the other, into the stanchion and winning the game for us.
I remember the game. We were 2-1 down actually. It was 25 minutes left, and Bristol were a good side, and they went up our end of the pitch and they hit the post while we were thinking about Because the natural thing is, if you go behind, right, let's get the subs on, you know what I mean? And we didn't want to do that. We had plenty of time. We just need to work out what we needed to do. And so, first of all, I never used to say to Daniel, do this or do that. I always used to say to him, look, we need you tonight. That was it. Because I said, if, there's no point in us trying to tell Daniel Sturridge how to drop a shoulder or how to go past people. He could do that better than we could. What we needed to do was get him in the right frame of mind always. And talented people are more difficult to manage. That's why they're talented. There's more flair, but there's also
creativity
sometimes
comes with a caveat. Yeah,
it does. Yeah. So basically, that was always my instruction. Hey, come on, we need you, Sturridge, tonight. That was it. That's how I used to speak to him. Never told him once how to play. However, once the game was going and we were dominating it, and then went behind 2-1. I had a breather, I'd chat with Alex, and we decided to take a winger off and put midfielder on, which we did. And then their slowest player was a left back, I always remember. And I just said to Sturridge, go and play on their left back. And of course, he got 2 goals. We won the game 4-2. And
then went on to win it.
And we went on to win the trophy, which we'd been chasing.
Holy Grail.
It was only a measure of where we come from, from being perceived as the joke club, 90% losers, to becoming the place that nobody wanted to come and play us. That, to me, was the best message and the best sort of accolade that you can give the people that were working there, right throughout the club, because, I had to deal with the financial people, and they were all on board looking at the youth side, the academy wanting to do well. So that was the job, unity, wasn't it?
Well, that's the thing about that. So the thing that's missed there is before the game, he's done the warm-up and that and come in, and had this crisis of confidence, this anxiety, and didn't want to play and saying, I can't do it, I can't play. Yeah. And within 10 minutes, you've coaxed him round, and as it was, it looks like if he hadn't played, you wouldn't have won.
He probably... sometimes players have rituals, don't they? And, I used to always remember Stephen Allen always checking his hamstrings and so on. You've mentioned Kevin De Bruyne, who's absolutely probably as good a player as we're going to see. And everybody has some form of vulnerability at some point, and they just need reassurance. Even people, that are in charge, if you like, they need reassurance. Just because they're the so-called boss doesn't mean to say that they haven't got any weaknesses. They have. And that's why we used to try and, even a simple thing like when we used to decide on scholarships, every one of our coaching staff and recruitment, so there's only 11 to start off with, and that included 2 secretaries. So there was probably 5 or 6 of us sat in the office, and we would go through, out of a selection of 12 boys coming in, we'd probably agree on 10. Okay, so that was the easy bit. 2 of them would be borderliners. So I remember on one occasion, I didn't particularly want to give a scholarship out. And one person said, yeah, I think he's got something. And we used to always go with the person that said they think they've got something, because that was our safety valve. And, that to me was A, trusting your staff. Secondly, not I'm Mr. Big, I'm telling you we're not having him. No, if somebody decides out of the staff, there's no point in having good staff if you're not going to listen to their viewpoints. So we always had that system. 5 of us would decide, mostly we're all together. Somebody else said, look, I'm making a case out for him. We went with the one that made the case out. So it usually worked for us.
Well, I remember sitting in with you, and and I've written about this in my book, and I remember you saying, look, that had happened. We've canvassed the group, and there's not much in your favour. But I remember you saying to me, but I see a look in your eyes and a fire in your eyes. Whether you were managing me psychologically, I don't know, but I remember you sitting down and saying, look, out of all the other staff, there's lots of no's, in terms of letting you pass on. But I see something in you, and there's a fire in you, and I'm going to give you an extra 6 months. And I always remember working then to prove you right and myself right, because I always believed, and other people in my family. But I always remember that, and I didn't know whether, as you've said there, if somebody seen something in someone, you would ride that. And in my case, it certainly that instinct from one of us, if it was you, if it was one of the other members of staff, definitely paid off.
I'll tell you what, Paul Power always loved you because you passed forward, right? Frank loved you because you were tough, and he could relate to that, you know. Alex would always love players because he felt they could do a job for him in the team, because that, you know, he was very team orientated. Alex
wants to win. Yeah.
My job was to basically make sure nothing slipped through the system. That was it. And you know, to have had you slip through the system or any of the players, the only one that ever left us was Neil Mellor, and I played with his dad.
He was in the same youth team as me, Spad.
Yeah. And obviously Ian came to see me, and he said, "Look, Jim, it's been a mess here." I said, "You know," he said, "I'm going to take him away." I said, "Look, I haven't seen him, but I'm told he's a good player. But I've got that much we need to do. We can't worry about one player." This is in '97. And he went on and played in Liverpool's first team, so he made the right decision. Great for him, and he's doing some punditry work now. So that's good. We didn't miss him. It was just the fact that we had other things to put the big picture in, you know, the big scene in place, if you like. So that's the only one that I can recall. And the other one, maybe Wayne Hennessy, who was we only had one team, and lovely parents. Wayne, good guy. Schmeichel was the competition, Casper. So we had to...
And Joe Hart had been signed as well.
Yeah, Joe had been signed from Shrewsbury. So he went, and Chris Evans, a mate of mine who was the academy manager at Wolves, he was a Welsh lad as well. So he knew him, he took him, and what a career he's had, over 100 caps for Wales. So you haven't missed him. To my mind, it's easy. It would have been easier to say, no, we're going to sign him, we'll just keep him here. I like to get careers for lads, and obviously we wanted careers from Manchester City, but if it went on somewhere else, well, we're still part of that.
So last two questions. First one, up until, say, about the age of 18, who's the most talented that you've seen that has never come to fruition? Who's the like disappointing one? Where, you know, not digging people out. Might have been an injury, might have been circumstance.
There was a lad at Oldham called Paul Heaton, who he played in the first team, but he did have an injury, and he was really talented, really talented. At City, probably Donald McDermott was a great trialist when he came in, and he did a terrific job for us in the youth side, played in that winning side. Difficult for players that play to be creative. I would have loved Daniel Sturridge to really have done, you know, you can't say he's done badly because he hasn't, but he had so much talent, and actually a very, very likeable lad. I really liked him as a lad, and
he fucking does me head in on the Sky. With
well,
all the fucking
I know, but
that's
the way it is.
But he is a good kid. I do like that.
I did like him, and as you know, you're a different personality than Daniel, but we've got a great relationship, and I've got a great relationship. So that was my job, was to build up bonds, trust, whatever. We all know the football's the easy bit. We all know football. It's how you manage, you know, it's how you manage the whole complexity of dealing with the chairman, making sure the players trust you, making sure the players know you know football, because, you know, sometimes because you weren't a household name as a player, maybe people thought I'd never played, you know. Maybe if they'd have seen
people
me
think
play.
I haven't played now. They just forget you. You know, the ship's in the night, Jim. It's,
you know,
in and out.
It's funny, really, you know. And but yeah, I would have loved, because of his technical ability, I would have loved Daniel to have been able to compete better, getting the ball back. Because I think every manager, I know Ancelotti thought he was great at Chelsea, and if Ancelotti thinks you're a good player, I think you listen to that, don't you? You know. So yeah, I mean, terrific players, and I've got to say, you know, personally, I should. I've been so lucky to have had involvement in football. You know, for someone that's played a limited amount of games, my love of the game has never diminished. I love seeing people do well, and I think it's great. You know, all those players that kept me in a job, I should be grateful for, really. You know, so it's a give and take, isn't it? You know, I just loved every minute of the time. I hated it when I had to leave, but you know, we can't stay there forever, can we? And so my other great thing now, I get involved with this charity. I do enjoy doing that. I only referee the games and stuff, probably very badly, but you know, give motivational stuff to them and try and just show them, look, life's there to be enjoyed. The world belongs to all of us, and you know, we've got as football does, and I don't think we need to keep making changes in the game. The game is great. It's only the people that are now trying to influence it. Sometimes I think for their own career development, we don't need it. You know, we talked straight away about punditry. I think the knowledge that people come out with is very good. But do we need to hear it every game? I'm not sure it does now. I think it's gone stale. That would be my, without knocking anybody, that would be slightly my personal view on it.
So last question from me, Jim. If you know, you've got to imagine there's going to be some people out there who are obviously in recruitment and in talent spotting and want to get better at it. What advice would you give to somebody who's coaching young players or trying to work with young players? Based on your experience over the decades of producing talent, what advice would you give?
Well, I would say everybody knows the job, usually. If you get a job, it's usually because you've got the knowledge to do it. But I've always felt that the people that are the best at anything, and it doesn't matter what job it is, are the ones that care. Because you've got to care about your decisions, you've got to care about the direction that you're trying to encourage people to do. You've got to care about the families that your decisions affect, you know, and the hardest thing is to say no, obviously, to people. But if you've done it in the right way, no is not difficult. No just means you're going to change a different direction. You know, we've all had no, and everybody gets knocked down. But I think if I was coming into, the one thing I always tried to do was care for everybody I work with, whether it be a member of staff or a 9-year-old boy that came into the club and his family. So I think that the people that are the best at anything are the ones that care.
Steve Black's great saying, people don't care what you know till they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Legendary factory of talent producer. I can't thank you enough for your time, mate. Always
Pleasure.
great to speak to you.
You too.
And I hope everyone really enjoys that. Thank you. Common Sense with Joey Barton, with the legendary Jim Cassell.